here today, given the school holidays and the fact that many of my colleagues are off seeing their therapist and marriage guidance counsellor, given the busy 26 days ahead of us very, very shortly. The fourth choice, but happily the last. I'm told one of the attractions of these lunches is to see members of Queensland's Parliamentary Media Gallery in action, which will happen at the conclusion of our guest's speech. Sadly, only members of the gallery get to ask questions, but as is our practice, if you tweet whatever's on your mind, we'll be sure to give it every consideration before blocking you. Once again, the organisers have optimistically provided me with a script to follow. I never do. Now you know why they tried so many options before they reluctantly, resignedly settled for me. Takes me right back to schoolies week. Our guest, on the other hand, is much admired. She studied politics and journalism at QUT, picked the wiser direction, and landed a job advising Labor Minister Robert Schwarten. One of the most disconcerting things to watch in Parliament is to see our guest's face but hear Schwarto's voice coming out of her mouth. And there it is again. At 30, she won her first election and the distinction of being the youngest member of any cabinet under Anna Bligh, only to learn politics' toughest lesson. It can all be gone tomorrow. And it was. So imagine then what it takes, this time as a new mother, to try her luck again. Cast your mind back to the last election. Not a soul gave Labor a chance. And to take Ashgrove, she would have to unseat a premier, a powerful one. In that whole campaign, nobody in Ashgrove was safe from a camera and microphone or a phone poll. But there was one foolproof barometer of what people in Ashgrove were thinking. The barber chair in 80-year-old George Corcoran's shop. Although George had a strict rule, no religion and no politics, George knew the local girl who worked her way through Kelvin Grove High School, then uni in the fruit shop across the road, would be the one. The embodiment of what hard work and a valued education will get you. The reigning member for Ashgrove. The tuck shop mum, who's also Minister for Education. Champion Irish dancer and Minister for the Commonwealth Games, and the reason we're here today, tourism, Kate Jones.
America, you look like you need a holiday, a fair dinkum holiday. In the land of wonder, the land down under. Yeah, there's a few things I've got to warn you about. Firstly, you're going to get wet. Because the place is surrounded by water. Oh, and you're going to have to learn to say g'day. Because every day's a good day in Australia.
G'day, Paul.
G'day, love. Of course, you'll have to get used to some of the local customs, like getting a suntan in the restaurant, playing football without a helmet, and calling everyone mate. Thanks, mate.
She's right, mate.
Apart from that, no worries. You'll have the time of your life in Australia. Of course, we talk the same language. Although you lot do have a funny accent. Oh, before you rush out to book your Aussie holiday, call this toll-free number for your free Aussie holiday book. Come on. Come and say g'day. I'll slip an extra shrimp on the barbie for you.
Where we were. Can I start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we gather here this morning and pay my respects to elders past and present. Of course, I'd love to acknowledge our new Chair of Tourism Events Queensland, Brett Godfrey, and it's wonderful to have you here today, Brett. Yes, let's give him a round of applause. The CEO of Tourism Events Queensland, Leanne Coddington, the Director General of Tourism, Damien Walker, Henry Smurden, the Chancellor of Griffith University. I will have to shout out, even though it's a Griffith-funded event, sorry, Henry, to my Vice-Chancellor, a QUT, Peter Coldrake, who's hiding in the corner there, and members of the Press Gallery and friends of the tourism industry, one and all. And it's so wonderful to be with you here this morning. And I also want to acknowledge the sponsors of today's event, including Brisbane Airport Corporation, the Civil Contractors Federation, and Griffith University. And as Shane said in his opening remarks, it really is a privilege for me to be standing here today as Queensland's Tourism Minister. As a proud Queenslander, a fifth-generation daughter of Brisbane, there is nothing like becoming the Minister for an industry that so many Queenslanders rely on, have a stake in, and are deeply proud of. Many of my own family have worked hard in tourism and the hospitality sectors, riding the highs and lows of an industry that has helped define who we are and how we see ourselves. Sun, sand, surf and fun. That's the Queensland brand I grew up with, the one that I owned, that we all owned. And best of all, we proudly boasted about to our southern snobs that claimed that they had the monopoly on sophistication. In fact, the heydays of the 80s, when Hogues did offer to slip another shrimp on the barbie, is often referred to as the tourism industry's golden age. But as we approach 2020, our sun is shining again. The Queensland tourism industry is back. It's bigger and it's better, and more importantly, it's here to stay. And this parochial Queenslander could not be happier. We have the best address on earth. We know it. The challenge for us is to prove it and to show it. And that's the work we must do. And if we do, if we get the next few years right, build on the work that has already happened, all of the signs show that we can compete in a global market. We can grow our industry and support the thousands more Queensland jobs, long-term sustainable jobs in this industry, what I would describe as the best industry of all. So where are we now? Tourism is now worth $25 billion to the Queensland economy. More Australians than ever before are choosing to spend time here in Queensland. And in the latest data released this week, business travel to our state, which is music to the ears of the convention centre where we're meeting here today, shout out to Alan and AEG Ogdens, to travel to our state, business travel has increased by 16% in the last 12 months. And of course, international visitor expenditure is also at record highs, breaking the $5 billion mark for the very first time. Emerging opportunities with Taiwan, Korea and India are driving demand, coupled with a resurgent Japanese market. Unfortunately, I still have all those Japanese-trained teachers in Queensland schools too. And of course, as the newly minted Chair of Tourism Australia, Bob East, a proud Gold Coaster, often says, when it comes to China, it is the size of the prize. The latest data showing that Chinese visitors are pumping more than $1 billion into Queensland in overnight expenditure every year. And only just this morning, we were at the Brisbane airport to welcome the inaugural Hainan Airlines flight to Brisbane. For the first time, operating a direct flight between Brisbane's sister city, Shenzhen, directly into Brisbane. It's also the first Hainan airline flight into the Queensland market. In fact, since we were elected, under the Palaszczuk government, we have secured more than 735 extra seats, then generating $570 million into the Queensland economy. The stars are aligning, and these statistics tell a compelling story. We have come a long way since the 80s. But global competition is now fierce, and the worldwide growth in tourism demand is ferocious, but it offers us something new. The ability to underpin long-term sustainable jobs in the tourism sector. There is huge opportunity for Queensland. So how do we get there? We know we need to meet our offering, to meet our promise, to be the best address on earth. We need to be an events epicentre, have a world-class experiences, showcasing our culture, people and places, unique experiences that can only be found here in Queensland and nowhere else. There is a lot government has done and can continue to do to drive this vision. And more importantly, from our government's view, our Premier's view, proactively, collaboratively, working with industry to grow tourism jobs. But I also think there is significant work in innovation and investment that must happen within the industry as well, if we're really going to get that cut through that we need to create this long-term sustainability. We have to completely disregard the old ideas, maybe a hangover from the 80s, of competing against each other for our share of the tourism dollar and enter a new era of collaboration within the industry. We need all 6,771 tourism operators to understand that the like business down the road that has opened up right next door to you, that the data that we are seeing will show that both businesses will be sustainable. They are not your competitor, they are your collaborator. And in industry data that's just been released, we've actually seen 240 new tourism businesses established even since October last year. We need all tourism operators to look at new integrated opportunities with their peers in industry, to take experiences to that next level. An example that comes to mind for me is River Life's John Sharp and the partnership he has with P&O Cruises that saw for the first time adventure tourism experience based on cruise ships that are now travelling around Australia and around the world. And I do want to acknowledge Daniel Geschwind, who's in the room here today, because they won a QTIC Innovation Award. So industry is working together to recognise this innovation and collaboration. And the best thing about being in Queensland, and Brett, I know you know this and you'll see this very much in your role, is that we have so many tourism industry leaders right here in Queensland. And just look at the award-winning Brisbane Airport, which is leading by example. They've made record investment in infrastructure, billions of dollars in upgrades and expansions. The addition of the second runway will be a game changer, not only for our city, but also for Queensland. And more broadly, an airport that is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with Brisbane's new runway in 2020, will have more capacity than any other airport in our country. So, if we make this shift with investment in new experiences and better infrastructure, I think we can fast track our wins. Any tourism minister worth their salt must understand what government can do to support the industry to invest in its future. And we made a promise at the last election that we would appoint a senior minister to give the industry the recognition it deserves in Queensland and has not had in the past. After all, the tourism industry employs more people than the construction industry and the mining industry combined. And for the journalists in the room, and Shane kind of alluded this to his comments, that when you covered the last election, the one person did know that they were going to win, and that was the Premier, can I say. She honestly did tell me that weeks before the election, and I didn't believe her, I must be frank, I was with Shane. But given we only had 5 candidates out of the 89 candidates that had ever served as a minister, the idea of having a senior minister was a challenge. But can I say, I mention this only because, for me, that weighed heavily on my mind, that this is something that the tourism industry had asked for a long period of time, and to have that clout at the cabinet table, and I was now given that responsibility. And I say that here today because this promise to industry is one that gave me the clarity to know that I had to make the tough decisions, that I'd have to pick winners, that I'd have to get the fundamentals right in order to grow an industry. We were at a time where we knew that we were going to see growth, but it was about making sure we were pulling the right levers that were going to leverage the best possible growth to deliver on our broader commitment as a government to create jobs. So I made a number of calls, and the first one was that we were going to, firstly, back Tourism Events Queensland. And I want to acknowledge the great work that Tourism Events Queensland does. They have fantastic people, and Leanne Coddington is a great leader that has great relationships with her team and also with the industry. And I know many of you have experienced her warmth, generosity and smarts. But the reason why I talk about this too is because when we came into government, we knew that the LNP government had cut funding in the forward estimates for TEQ. But we were unsure about the quantum, and when I worked out it was actually $188 million, as you can imagine, I had a slightly difficult conversation with the Treasurer. He thought it was a lot less than that. But to say the least, I'm very fortunate that I have a Treasurer who's from Cairns, so he genuinely understood the importance of funding tourism and funding it properly. So to that end, we backed TEQ and we gave them the funding certainty now and into the future that they need to be a real leader in this space. In fact, since we've been in government, we now have committed more than $500 million to Tourism Events Queensland now and into the future through our 4-year funding guarantee. And TEQ have used this. They've used it well. They've locked in long-term partnerships with Flight Centre, Qantas, China Southern Airlines, and TEQ has also signed MOUs with Singapore Airlines and China Eastern Airlines. Other industry partnerships also include, going into that Asia space, is Mafengwo, U2 agreements, and of course with QTIC. Our government's funding guarantee has also provided certainty to the 13 regional tourism organisations across our 13 destinations in Queensland. We've also backed a brand new advertising campaign, which is focused on the experiences that we know the consumers that want to come to Queensland want, because it is backed by some of the most comprehensive market research that we have undertaken in Queensland in over a decade. It is sophisticated and complements, not competes, with what Tourism Australia is doing nationally. We've also put in place a great board. So good that our chair has been poached to Tourism Australia, but as the Premier announced yesterday, we are so delighted and so excited to have Brett Godfrey on board. And the feedback that we've received, even in the last 24 hours, Brett, sorry to make it all about you for a second, but to say that has been overwhelming. I mean, Brett understands aviation. He understands that the future for us is building those brand new, genuine experiences and lifting the standard of those experiences in Queensland, and also knows that by working collaboratively with industry, we can showcase who's doing it brilliantly, who's doing it the best, and encourage all other tourism operators to reach that new standard. So a really exciting piece of work that I'll talk a little bit later in the speech. We've also worked really hard to secure more flights to more places. By boosting our investment in aviation attraction, we are building momentum and growing confidence in the broader industry, so there is investment and infrastructure. This is fundamental to making Queensland a world-class destination. And as I said in my introductory remarks, already under our government, 735,000 extra seats into Queensland. And on Sunday, we announced the jewel in the crown. And as the Sunday Mail editor quite rightly jabbed, putting Victoria and New South Wales on notice. We have now secured for the very first time direct flights between Beijing and Brisbane, something that has been long wanted for, hugely being campaigned for, and finally being delivered. This will absolutely transform our relationship with our largest trading and tourism partner, China. We made the decision to be aggressive in the Chinese market through our Connecting with Asia Fund, and it has worked, and it will pay dividends for many years to come. This also builds on the very exciting announcement we made with Qantas. Queensland will be home to the East Coast Pacific operations of Qantas' newest aircraft, the Boeing 787-900 Dreamliner. This decision will support 470 jobs and is a testament to Queensland's pipeline in the airline's future. Securing deals like this not only opens up Queensland's access to the rest of the world, but it creates employment opportunities in some of the world's most highly skilled fields. We've also punched above our weight when it comes to backing major events. I've got to admit, I couldn't resist making the joke about the horn fight. A bit cheeky, I know, but maybe I'm spending too much time with Peter Beattie. But the Queensland events calendar is now worth $600 million to the economy, up from $380 million in 2015. Huge change in the way that we are presenting ourselves to the broader market by securing these major events that are attracting visitors interstate and internationally to Brisbane. We know it is a proven formula that large-scale events are a great platform to showcase Queensland's unique tourism offerings and works. It has also been well reported, and with the Battle of Brisbane is using one of the examples, that this was worth around $27 million to our local economy. And we've also secured the Logies. Now, and I know there might be some knockers out there about the Logies, and I've certainly been on radio defending this, but the Logies isn't also just a one-off event, and it isn't also just poaching a great event from Victoria. It is also a partnership with the Bauer Media Group. And for those that don't know, they actually have a stable of more than 60 publications across Australia, including Gourmet Traveller, National Geographic, Women's Day and Women's Weekly. And what we have negotiated with them through that large platform is tourism advertising for Queensland and all of their publications. And of course also with Channel 9, the broadcaster of the Logies. So there is a much deeper and longer relationship that comes with securing an event like that on the Gold Coast. So Queensland events calendar, in my opinion, is now world class. But we are also investing in infrastructure. So I was very pleased to see that the civil engineers were here today. We are investing in catalytic infrastructure to position Queensland for future growth. Our government is building around $10 billion in new infrastructure that will improve our tourism offering and make our destination more attractive. This is investment in rail and roads and ports, major events facilities, and of course our national parks. Here in Brisbane, we have fully funded and committed to build Cross River Rail. This $5 billion project will transform our city into a world-class city, and will also benefit all of us that live locally. We're taking 18,000 cars off the road to any of the Ashgrovians in the room, but also because it will give a world-class experience to international visitors that expect that quality of public transport when they go to a major city. And in the north, finally, we have our $250 million Townsville Stadium being under construction, a new home for the Cowboys, $176 million for the Cairns Convention Centre, and we're supporting the $1.6 billion expansion of the Townsville Port. By widening the shipping channels, Townsville will be able to create opportunities for large cruise ships, buildings on their strong tourism offering. And we're contributing more than $40 million contributing to the $40 million upgrade of the Whitsunday Airport, doubling the size of the departure lounge and adding an extra departure gate and expanding the runway. And the Whitsundays really are an iconic Queensland tourism destination that is known to many. And as a special for Stephen Wardell, the Courier Mail journalist, we're also spending $1 million upgrading the Proserpine Dam infrastructure as well. And in Mackay, we're spending $1.3 million to construct a visitor information centre at the Field of Dreams Parklands in Serena. And for those that haven't been there, the Field of Dreams is also the site of the award-winning Serena Sugar Shed, which always wins awards at our QTIC Awards ceremony and is recognised nationally for its offering. And of course, with 195 days to go to the Commonwealth Games, we have already delivered $320 million in new infrastructure associated with the Games, on top of the extra investment that we have made that benefits the broader Gold Coast community and our connectivity for tourism guests and visitors is, of course, the duplication of the heavy rail line between Coomera and Helensvale. And not only was I part of a government that delivered stage 1 of light rail, which has completely transformed the Gold Coast, but after 3 years of the former government not doing anything in this space, we will have the second stage of light rail delivered in time for the Commonwealth Games. So more than $1.4 billion worth of transformative infrastructure for the Gold Coast, a legacy that will last long after Borrowby does his last thumbs up. In 2018, Queensland will deliver its largest event. In total, we have upgraded, as I said, 18 venues in Brisbane, Townsville, Cairns and the Gold Coast. but from a tourism industry experience and what we can showcase to the world, 1.5 billion people that will tune in, is that they can see for themselves everything that we have to offer. So I talk about the significant government investment because probably the most exciting thing for me as the Minister for Tourism is what is happening in the tourism sector right now. And that is the private sector investment in new tourism experiences and infrastructure. And after a decade of relatively low investment in this new infrastructure, we are now seeing $14 billion worth of private sector investment in lifting the standard, the quality of the products we have on offer to attract more visitors here. $14 billion pipeline. Of course, in Brisbane, there is the Star Queen's Wharf Integrated Resort Development that is, as we speak, transforming the area and where I work. And of course, their investment on the Gold Coast. But there's also GA Group in Cairns are developing two $100 million refurbishment of the hotels in that market, $640 million for Cairns Kerworld Integrated Eco Resort, and the Full Share Group allocating $2 billion for the Laguna Keys redevelopment on the Whitsundays. Today, I can announce also, to help the Whitsundays recovery efforts after Cyclone Debbie, we will give special status to Hayman Island and Daydream Island. This means that the Coordinator General will have the power, the muscle to cut red tape and quickly progress development applications so we can get these resort developments up and running as soon as possible. We're working towards getting them done by the end of next year. In total, between the two islands, we're looking at around $170 million investment and new luxury offerings and experiences in the Whitsunday region. And the Office of the Coordinator General has been working closely with the proponents of Hayman Island, Amalfi Australia, and Daydream Island Resort and Spa. The final piece I want to talk about, and I think this is a piece that I think Brett will also have a huge role to play in and brings amazing confidence to the industry, is how we work with industry to showcase our best. Our government, I think, has worked really closely with the tourism industry. Our Advancing Tourism strategy wasn't a strategy developed by government and imposed on industry. It was one that we developed with industry sitting around the table so we knew what our key goals were. It was a truly collaborative approach. And as Tourism Minister, in addition to our large industry forums that were held in Mackay and Townsville and Connecting with Asia and Cairns, I have an industry leaders roundtable where frank and fearless advice is asked for, and I can also say in this room, because many of them are here, is given. And in fact, Brett and I've got one scheduled for next week, so I'm hoping Brett can be there. But this approach builds on the collaboration that I talked about in my opening remarks. That for us, we need to understand fundamentally as an industry that we are not competing against each other, but we are competing for each other. And when you think about it, for a long time, we've all accepted that when Sydney's doing well, Australia is doing well. And the game changer for us as a tourism industry is also knowing fundamentally that if the Gold Coast is doing well, then that's great news for Cairns. And if Cairns is doing well, then that's great news for the Gold Coast. And this is the way that I think we need to progress going forward into the future. When we play to our strengths, everyone wins. We need to showcase all of our winners and encourage everyone to lift. And in closing, I'm pleased to launch today a new opportunity for our tourism industry to partner with TEQ for the Best of Queensland's Experiences. The Best of Queensland Experiences is a world-first marketing initiative that we are investing in that identifies the tourism products that are consistently delivering a high-quality experience. These experiences bring to life our Queensland story, building our overall Queensland brand. And the old sales adage goes that customer knows best. Well, that's no different in the tourism sector. In this new tool that TEQ is developing, we will work with industry to make sure that the investment that they are making will grow their business. It's all about understanding what consumers need, wants and feedback, and building that into their business to grow it into the future. The best of Queensland's experiences will assess our Queensland tourism-based experiences according to online customer research, feedback, as well as other criteria like social media presence and, of course, digital presence. Unfortunately, in Queensland, more than half of our tourism businesses still don't have the capacity at the moment for you to book their product online. And with the huge growth that we're seeing in these emerging Asian markets, we know that many people in those markets are booking their experiences and where they're going to stay months in advance, digitally online, before they touch place here. So it's us understanding and working with our tourism operators to go to that next level, to understand that investment in digital is not a luxury, it's a necessity if we're going to be seen and known in that global market. And I'm very pleased also to report that this new approach, where we highlight those tourism operators that are making this investment and are being recognised internationally for doing so, has a strong backing of our regional tourism operators and the Queensland QTIC as well. So as we come to the end of 2017, and you just need to have a look at the week that we've had, the new flights from Henan into Shenzhen, the new flights from Beijing, a massive announcement with Brett Godfrey coming on board. There is huge opportunity for Queensland into the future. And for me, I stand here not only as a tourism minister, but Shane mentioned in his remarks, I'm also, as I said, a proud Brisbane person that's lived here for 5 generations, and I'm choosing to raise my own children here. If we get this tourism piece right, there is so much potential for growth and jobs, nothing like we have seen in the past. The position that Queensland has, being on the doorstep of Asia, makes us gives us a unique advantage. And our job as an industry, and my job as a minister, is to make sure that we are looking at every single opportunity we have to grow that. We need to be talking to our students, and we're doing this to the young tourism leaders, our young people today, to say that this is an industry where you will have a diverse career, a long career, and a stable and a sustainable career in an industry that wasn't traditionally seen like that. So in closing, I just want to show you our new ad, because one thing I've also learned as a tourism minister is we put all this research and investment into what we know our guests internationally want. And our new campaign does, We Know Just the Place, I Know Just the Place, does this, but many Queenslanders never get to have an opportunity to see it. So please enjoy, and I look forward to taking your questions in a moment. Thank you.
You know, I kind of feel like going somewhere a little bit different.
Oh, if you want to do something really different, I know just the place. Not far from here. Just head out, take a ride.
I walked across an empty land. I knew the pathway like the back of my hand. Is this the place we used to love? Is this the place that I've been dreaming of? And if you have a minute, why don't we go? So why don't we go somewhere only we know? Somewhere only we know.
We don't have too much time. In a moment, I'll throw it open to my friends from the gallery. You mentioned the research, the market research. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that told you, how that informed you, and what was in it?
Absolutely, and I think what I've really understood is, you know, for a long time I think Queenslanders that aren't involved in the tourism industry sort of take it for granted that we've got the most spectacular beaches, we have beautiful rainforests, we have beautiful blue skies. But that's not going to be enough to cut it in an increasingly global competition market, particularly when it comes to price sensitiveness. So it's actually building unique experiences that you can't find anywhere else. And the work that we're going to do in the coming years is about how do we showcase that. So for example, it's like you can't just come and see the most beautiful beach, you can come and swim with dolphins on the most beautiful beach. You can come and see turtles hatching and watch the turtles. You have to have something that is unique that no one else can offer. That's what we're hearing very loud and clear in the research. And sorry, just to say, like in some ways, we were talking about this morning at the airport, Why the Hogan ad cut through at the time was it was the first time we used a face to have a direct invitation to come to Australia and experience it. And that's exactly what I Know Just the Place is about. There's nothing worse than going to a community where you feel like when you're a tourist and you get sent to the dodgy restaurant or the, come buy these, crappy souvenirs, that kind of thing. That this is all about saying, ordinary Queenslanders saying, I know just the place where I go with my family. That authentic experience that we love about our city and we love about our state is what we should be offering to our visitors.
And you said complementing, not competing with Tourism Australia, and yet I know Tourism Australia will be flogging Australia to the rest of the world, and they'll turn up in Sydney expecting to see the Great Barrier Reef.
Well,
and
now
we'll go home having seen the bloody aquarium. So surely we do have to.
Oh, definitely, but I think the other way that you get around that is by being aggressive in the direct market flights area. So the more flights that we can open up that come directly to Brisbane is a game changer for that, because what we've been, and that's why I'm so passionate about it, because up until now, Beijing's a great example. For us to go to Beijing or someone from Beijing to come to Queensland, you've got to go via Sydney or Melbourne. That's going to be the huge difference when these flights start in December. You don't have to go to Sydney to get to the Great Barrier Reef. You can come directly through Queensland. And right now, 90% of visitors that go to the Cairns airport currently come from flights from southern states.
And tourists from China and India can afford a holiday in Queensland, because I can't.
You're in the wrong job, Shane. No. Well, look, that's right. I went to Toowoomba last holidays. Can I say, yeah, absolutely. There's a huge middle class growing. I mean, the Premier spoke about it yesterday in her State of the State address, about the fact that, it is overwhelming the first time you go to China and you see the growth and the wealth that's happening in that country. It's phenomenal. Like, even look at Shenzhen. I was laughing about this morning, Shane, because we always complain about the impacts of population growth on Brisbane, and they've gone from 30,000 people to 10 million people in 30 years.
Have they got to cross River Up?
I don't know. That's my next destination. I've got a direct flight.
My friends from the Media Gallery have some questions, I'm sure. No, they're looking at me like you're on your own, Shane.
Come on, Cobby.
We were being gentlemanly. Patrick Condren from Channel 7. Minister...
I do miss him. Where is he?
He's holidaying somewhere in Queensland.
Good on him.
I think he's on Moreton Island, yes.
See, there you go.
We will be taking up a little collection for Shane afterwards. But let me pick up...
Someone can give him a holiday. Can someone give Shane a holiday in Queensland?
Picking up on his point, because I know parochialism is a very dear subject, but I was really interested in what you were saying about competing for each other and not competing against each other. I know parochialism seems to work in the Queensland political environment, but it does get a bit tiring. And
I think it depends where you live.
Is it a bit nonsensical to be all competing against each other as states? I mean, when I go, if I was planning a holiday in America, I wouldn't be thinking, will I go to Tennessee or will I go to Massachusetts? I think I'm going to America. I mean, wouldn't it make more sense for all the state tourism organisations to be working together rather than trying to pinch clients from each other? Absolutely.
And Chris, but that's what I was trying to showcase, and that the picking up on Shane's point, your question, the whole I Know Just the Place was to elevate a new campaign which is about Queensland's best offerings, not the best offering in Cairns, the best offering in the Whitsundays, the best offering in Bundaberg, the best offering in Toowoomba, which is how we've operated for so long. And I think I've had this conversation many times with the industry since I've been the minister. For example, working with the Star Group, which is about saying, instead of saying this is what Brisbane has, this is what the Gold Coast has, this is what the Sunshine Coast has, what does when you come and stay in Brisbane, an hour or 2 hours drive away, which is how they sell holidays in America, is this experience and this experience. So absolutely, that is the work that we are doing right now, and I'm very pleased that QTIC and the RTOs are coming on that journey, which is what are the best experiences in Queensland that we can showcase, and everyone comes when we lift that. Does it mean that we're not playing with the southern states? I don't think so, because I think, as I said, we've worked really closely with Tourism Australia to make sure the messaging in our state-based advertising complemented the work that they were doing nationally. For example, their aquatic campaign that they ran last year.
But you did acknowledge that, quote, if Sydney's doing well, then Brisbane does well in terms of tourism. So isn't
so I meant that in regards to the broader message, you know, that
yes.
For a long time as Australians, we understand that if our capital city is doing well, then that's actually great for all of us. And I think what I'm trying to say is that this old adage that, you know, Gold Coast is competing with the Sunshine Coast and the Sunshine Coast is competing with the Southern Great Barrier Reef is what we're trying to break down.
Exactly, but couldn't we do that nationally as well?
Yeah, and I think we are. And I think certainly, you know, we're very lucky at the moment. We've got a Queensland chair, I'm being parochial. We've got a Queensland chair, a Queensland CEO and a Queensland minister nationally. Yeah, I think there's probably more work to do there, but I think John O'Sullivan as the CEO has done a lot of work in that space.
Hello, my name is Sonia Colbach. I'm from AAP. I guess what I want to know is in the wake of the growing middle class in China, how has the government's approach changed and how will it change further into the future to make that sustainable?
Yeah, so one of the things that industry spoke to me about, I talked about some of those industry forums we've had, and we had one up in Cairns in the first 12 months that we were elected, and it was that we had like a Connecting with Asia forum, which looked at all industries, including tourism, that the Premier hosted in Cairns. And out of that, a lot of industry was saying to me that we need to be more aggressive to get direct flights into markets. So we announced in last year's budget $37 million additional to attract new flights into Queensland. So, and the fact that we're now sitting here with the very first direct flights into Cairns from Guangzhou is huge for us, as well as having these Beijing flights directly into Brisbane. So for me, having those direct connections between the two markets will be the biggest down payment we can make in growing our trade relations with China as well. The other thing we're doing is also investing, as I said, in those lifting the standard and quality of the experiences when you come to Queensland, because there's nothing worse than someone coming in and not meeting the expectations that they had, and that's definitely the piece of work that we're doing. And as I said, $14 billion worth of private sector investment in changing the face of our tourism offering.
Sarah Vogler from the Courier Mail. Last year you were fairly critical of the tourism industry in Queensland and its online presence. You were saying that they needed to step that up in order to get that Chinese market. Is it any better a year later? Yeah,
it is getting better, and we've done a lot with our industry partners in this space, including having workshops in digital technology across Queensland. So we've been doing that through our department in partnership with our RTOs as well as QTIC and TEQ. And this latest announcement in regard of Queensland's best experiences goes to the heart of that. I mean, what we're going to be measuring is whether you're online, what people are saying about you online, whether you've got the capacity to actually do a transaction online, like pretty simple things from our perspective. But I think when you've been running a business successfully for a long period of time and it's made enough to sustain you, then you don't necessarily think about making that investment. And don't forget, for a large part of our industry, they're mum and dad operators as well as small business owners. So, but for my perspective as a tourism minister in Queensland, enabling the world to see all of those offerings online is really important for people to understand what Queensland truly has to offer.
Minister, as Minister for the Commonwealth Games, you're aware that a big deal is whether the new trains will be ready and transport in general will be up to scratch by the time the Games start. Can you please let us in on any secret conversations going on behind closed doors within government about where we're up to with that? Will the trains be ready in time?
Yes, they will be.
Thank you very much, Minister, for that answer. And one other quick one. As a senior government minister, this is outside your portfolio, but please, if I could get a whole of government response. The federal government today announced Bundaberg as the site for a cashless welfare card. Was the state government consulted on that? Are you aware?
I'm not aware that we were. But I also note that Malcolm Turnbull said that the extra 115,000 jobs that have been created in Queensland have nothing to do with the government of the day, even though we've created 4 times the amount of jobs compared to what Tim Nichols did when he was Treasurer, for example. And I would say that of all the people in the world, Malcolm Turnbull knows that business only invests when there's confidence in the market. So, you know, of all the people in Australia, Malcolm Turnbull would know that.
Spoken Kate Jones, written and authorised Kate Jones.
Authorised E. Moorhead.
Although the question was about the cashless welfare card, do you any thoughts on that?
This is taking the opportunities and grasping that I was just talking about. No, I wasn't aware that we had any consultation in regards to those cashless welfare cards.
There being no other questions, the time has come for us to draw the business card winner,
All right.
and hopefully they'll donate it to poor Shane Doherty Fund, because we can't afford it.
It's a free holiday to Cairns. Where do you want to go?
I went to Early Beach last
Oh,
time.
yeah, that's good. Thank you. No, we're not. Okay.
Ah, Mitchell Murphy from Gaydens. You've won a bottle of wine. Do you want it, mate? Thank you very much, Mitchell. And would you please thank the Tourism Minister, Kate Jones, for being our guest today. Thank you.